Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Venera Aitkul, presenting the topic, Must-Have Practices of Web Accessibility.
So, hi, I'm Venera, and today I will talk about must-have practices of web accessibility. But before, I would like to invite you, on the behalf of the experts, to participate in our raffle. So please scan this QR code. We will be announcing the giveaway at the experts booth today. There's some people still. Good. Okay. I will show this slide at the end once again, so no worries. A bit about myself. So I'm a team lead and DevExperts at DevExperts, a global fintech company. So for the last 3 years, I've been focusing on accessibility. I do all kind of mentorship inside DevExperts, and I came here from Porto, Portugal. So in this presentation, I will give a brief introduction to the concept of web accessibility, and then we will check some UI barriers in web. I will share with you some tools and resources that I personally use. Then we will analyze a real-life example I prepared for you, and at the end, just tiny hack how to add accessibility to your existing project. So let's begin. Poorly designed application can only serve a small subset of total potential audience. And that's where UI UX plays a crucial role, aiming to make your product more intuitive and user-friendly. However, that still leaves out a considerable chunk of potential users. 300,000 people only in Lithuania who might find your product hard to use depending on their physical and cognitive abilities. That's where accessibility comes in, to try to get that percentage as close to 100% and make your product truly inclusive. And as developers, we have an obligation to create products that are perceivable. So your content should be visible regardless of the viewport size or zoom percentage. Operable. So not all of the users may operate a mouse, so provide alternatives such as keyboard-based navigation. And most importantly, your product should be forgiving, because we all make mistakes, right? So offer second chances, cancellation options, instructions, and understandable. Use clear, concise language and create a predictable layout using a header, body, footer kind of structure. Just keep it familiar. And lastly, robust. So within certain limits, your product should work well enough in all of the common devices and browsers. It's water time. A bit ASMR also. Okay, so there are 3 major reasons why we should work on accessibility. From a business standpoint, accessibility expands market and opens up additional revenue opportunities. It increases user satisfaction and therefore loyalty. And you can forget that accessible products generally have way better user experience and SEO rankings. And ethically, accessibility is an act of empathy. And even though it is the morally correct thing to do, it is in fact becoming a legal requirement all around the world. So there are tons of regulations, but these are the most famous ones, let's say. So Americans with Disabilities Act in the USA, Equality Act in the UK, and the European Accessibility Act in the European Union. So don't forget to check your local regulations. And by the way, guys, I forgot to mention that at the end, I will provide a QR code with all of the resources that I will share today with you. So no need to take pictures, okay? So now I want to talk about some common UI issues. These easily solvable problems can prevent users from effectively interacting with your content. And these barriers usually are separated into 5 major types. So visual, hearing, cognitive and learning, neurological, motor and dexterity, and they can also be situational or temporary. So let's check one by one. Users with color blindness can have difficulties in distinguishing between certain colors, making it hard for them to understand color code information, especially if the color have no description. And the users with visual impairments such as blurred vision can feel difficulties seeing details clearly. And these kind of visual issues are actually the easiest to solve. They can be fixed by simply opting for high contrast colors and providing description to your UI elements. So the basic example is error. So you have to choose a correct icon, nice description, bright red background or border, and maybe you should make it even a pop-up. And here I made a recording of a navigation inside a typical e-commerce website. Why I did that? Because not all of the users with visual impairments can partially see. So they rely on assistive technologies such as screen readers to navigate. So they basically focus on elements using a screen reader, a keyboard, and screen reader will read it out loud. So now imagine trying to navigate this website using only the keyboard and with closed eyes. So the focus starts on that blue rectangle, the first one, right? And then instead of logically going to the next row, it jumps to the row above. And then it goes, instead of going to the second row, it goes to the third row. So this kind of erratic navigation can be extremely confusing and frustrating to the users who use screen readers. So that's one of the reasons why we should keep a logical navigation and the familiar layouts. And users with auditory sensitivity can be overwhelmed by sudden sounds and the loud audio in your web applications and websites. They can even feel pain. So it is very important to ensure that any audio can be muted or adjusted. And users who are deaf or hard of hearing may miss out on some very important information if your video audio don't provide any transcripts or subtitles. And as you can see in this image, subtitles are very important to have some context. But to have full experience is not enough. You have to be able to describe everything that's happening in your video, right? So that's why we need closed captions. So and sensory sensitivity is an increased sensitivity of central nervous system. And users with such sensitivities can be very overwhelmed and confused by too much information or too many details in a web page. So I believe it already happened to some of you when you open a page and then you're bombarded with information and you just close it and then you never look back. So users with dyslexia can have hard time reading and understanding text heavy content. And while users with autism can struggle with unpredictable layout and navigation, users with aphasia can struggle with understanding complex languages and instructions. So in this image, you can see another typical busy e-commerce website. So you should play with white space. Try to create a very obvious layout and hide all of the unnecessary information. Avoid flashing colors and fast animations. And as I stated previously, users with visual impairments require high contrast colors, but those colors might worsen migraine symptoms. So to improve that, you should provide dark mode option. And anyone here who ever suffered from migraine, I think agrees with me that dark mode sometimes can be a lifesaver. And lastly, motor and dexterity difficulties. So these users can have muscle weakness and generally decreased body control. They can feel tremors or lack of coordination or even pain that impacts movement. And in these situations, you can increase interactive areas, and ideally, it should be something like 44 by 44 pixels. Also, you can create keyboard shortcuts or keyboard navigations. And when you are creating keyboard navigation, try to opt for on-key up event in JavaScript instead of on-key down, because imagine a use case where a user just clicks on a button and stays pressing it. What will happen is that the logic attached to the on-key down will be triggered like several times. But the logic attached to on-key up will be triggered only once when the key is released. So it's a tiny hack, but it can change experiences. And a lot of times when we think about accessibility, we tend to imagine people with permanent and very obvious disabilities. And even though these individuals are a crucial part of our user base, they are not the only ones who benefit from accessible software. According to the results of this State of HTML 2023 survey, it's very fresh. I think it's from the last week. And even though the sample is not too big, it's around 12,000 people, we can see that roughly 1 in 5 developers have some sort of impairment. And without experiences those challenges personally, let's be honest, we all benefit from accessibility every day. So when you came to this shopping and you park your car, you use parking sensors. You entered through automatic doors, right? You have iPhones and Androids, you have Siri, and I believe some of you have Alexas at home. And we are in tech, obviously you have smart light bulbs. So you use zoom in and zoom out and eternally turn on Netflix subtitles. And now that we learned about the importance and impact of accessible design, I want to share with you the tools and resources that I use. So here I made a list, and as a developer I can say that these tools are a game changer for me. They make my work interesting and easy. Let's start. So whenever you are working on accessibility, you will inevitably stumble upon these web content accessibility guidelines and the WAI ARIA specifications. So these guidelines and specifications are created and maintained by World Wide Web Consortium, an international community founded by the inventor of World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee. So the guidelines basically dictate the experience, how a web should feel like. And the specifications basically are tools that you use to realize those guidelines. And the WAI ARIA stands for Web Accessibility Initiative, and ARIA accessible rich internet applications. So they include attributes that you can attach to your HTML elements, which makes them easier to be interpreted by assistive technologies such as screen readers. So these attributes can define roles like button, menu, and alerts. They can define states like disabled or checked, or even past properties like a value, label, description. And starting out might be very challenging. That's why cool girls and guys from World Wide Web Consortium created an incredible practical guide with ready-to-go examples, code, and great explanation that you can basically copy-paste to your project. And besides that, Mozilla developers documentation is also great to consult about anything related to web, but especially HTML and accessibility. So these guidelines and specifications are used for the legal regulations that I mentioned on the first slide. So they are a source of truth. They are actually legal documents. And HTML is the foundation of the web. And while semantic HTML tags come with built-in accessibility information that makes them easy to be interpreted by screen readers, non-semantic HTML elements don't come with such information and should be used only for stylistic purposes. So a very fun fact that the first rule of ARIA specifications actually is to not use ARIA. It means that if there is an HTML semantic tag that will get you the behavior you're looking for, you should opt for that tag instead of trying to recreate the wheel. So obviously you can recreate any semantic tag using a plain div, but you will have to add tons of attributes, CSS classes, and be very careful to control it with JavaScript. So, and also when you use semantic tags, it makes your code more beautiful, easy to understand and maintain. And when you're inspecting an element inside of a browser, especially the semantic elements, you can find all the accessibility information related to that element inside accessibility tab of any modern browser. And for some reason, if you're using some these new gaming browsers, they might not have accessibility tab, but they will always provide alternatives and accessibility information. So all the browsers have this. And inside, you can find accessibility tree, which is accessible representation of your DOM tree. So in this situation, I created an input type submit, which is basically a button. So you can see inside the accessibility tree, it says is a button. And I also passed some ARIA disabled attribute for the sake of example, so you can find it there. And inside properties, you can see the value and the disabled state and labels. You can also see the accessibility tree for your entire web page. You can do that by just enabling that enable full page accessibility tree checkbox and then clicking on that tiny man icon, and it will transform your elements into accessibility tree. It is very useful because this way you can have a rough idea how your page will be interpreted by assistive technologies. Lighthouse can also be useful. You can choose accessibility category, run the analyzer, and it will generate a report based on your page and accessibility score, which will affect your SEO rankings. And these are extensions that are always with me. They go with me from one browser to another, from my one Mac to another. So DevTools, it's an incredible extension, very similar to the Lighthouse example. But the advantage here is that the UI is way better. I like it. And it will also generate report based on your entire page. But it also will provide with very nice solutions for your errors. It has also highlighting feature, so you can just click on an error and it will highlight where exactly that error is happening. This extension by IBM can be used as an alternative for DevTools. It does basically the same stuff, so generates a report, provides solutions, and highlights the errors. So, as we stated, high contrast colors are important, but when you're developing or creating mockups, it can be very boring and tedious going around and comparing one foreground color with another background color. So this extension basically goes through your page, collects all of the colors, and generates a contrast ratio report. So it is useful also for the designers. And this one, it's another one that can be used for by designers. So it's a color blindness and vision loss simulator. So here, for example, you can simply add your open your Figma inside the browser or drag and drop your mockup and see if your colors and layout make any sense. You can start testing accessibility while still coding. So for that purposes, ESLint has a great plugin that will throw errors and warnings whenever you're messing up with your semantic code. A Storybook also has a great add-on. It will generate report based on the Storybook's iframe. It also provides solutions and you can highlight the errors. And screen readers are basically assistive technologies that help mainly users with visual impairments to navigate through your page. So they translate digital content into audible content, sometimes send it to a braille display. So here you can see a list of the most commonly used screen readers in the market. And at DevExperts, we use NVDA and VoiceOver because to cover all of the common operative systems and the user market. So using screen reader can be actually quite easy. You can just turn it on and start navigating using a keyboard. And the next shortcut tab is used to jump from one interactive element to another one, like from button to a button. And the combo of Shift and Tab is used to a reverse jump. And the enter space is used to interact with your element, and arrow keys can be used as a complementary navigation keys. So this is a recording I made using a voiceover. So I'm jumping from one button to a button, and voiceover is basically reading the label or content of a button and the type. And lastly, this is an official markup validator by World Wide Web Consortium. This is amazing because you can basically copy and paste the link to your web page, or even copy and paste HTML markup, and it will generate a report based on the latest guidelines. So now that we saw the importance of web design and we have all of the tools, I think it's time to apply it to a real life example I prepared for you. So I chose a color picker, like one of these, for that purpose, because I think color picker touches several problems at once. And I believe you've seen these ones all over the internet, especially in the online clothing stores. They are usually basically just a basic list of dozens of colors. You can't focus on them using a keyboard. Even if you can, they don't have a visual focus or hover state, so you don't know if you're actually focused. They don't have any descriptions or tooltips, so they are very dummy. So for the sake of example, I removed all of the unnecessary elements. I left just a list, and I also created a typical HTML code of a typical front-end developer for such case. Do we have front-end developers here today? Quite a lot. So, dear colleagues, don't we have a tendency of overusing divs for everything? So this is actually a normal code in a normal sense. So, but this is actually an accessibility nightmare. So let's check why. So as I stated previously, this list doesn't have any descriptions, right? So this is how users with color blindness will see it. Actually, do we have users with color blindness here? No. Okay, great. Otherwise you would have like a meta experience. But you can see in all of the examples, actually, it's quite impossible distinguishing between certain colors, right? Especially in the situation with achromatopsia. And here I made a recording of a simulation how users with a visual impairment would perceive our list using a voiceover. So let's check it.
Code pen demo, image, 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 image.
So for the users with visual impairments, this list might as well not exist because it doesn't bring any useful information, right? And the first and foremost important step here to improve our situation is to use semantic HTML. So I improved a bit our code. I replaced some of the divs with an ordered list and list item tags. It's a tiny change, so let's see how it will affect the experience. So here's another recording.
Code pen, DevDays Vilnius code example, improved code, list 8 items. Image 1 of 8. Image 2 of 8. Image 3 of 8. Image 4 of 8.
Well, hallelujah, we have a list here and it has 8 items, but this still is not enough because what kind of list is this, right? So the next and the final step here is to add all of the necessary attributes. So here's the final code. It became quite bigger. Just take a brief look here. I will show this code once again in a bit. Okay, so let's continue. Tab index is used for to define a focus order of an element when user is navigating using a tab key. So tab index 0 means that your element is visible for keyboard navigation, therefore for screen readers. And if you want to hide it, you just pass tab index -1. If you want to create some sophisticated order, pass tab index 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And so it's very important for users with visual impairments to have context of a list, right? Because we sighted users, we just open a page and we see the list of colors. Great, we don't need any explanation there. But here it is very, very important. So that's why I'm creating a label, our list of colors. It's just example. And I'm connecting this label through ARIA labeled by attribute to our list, where I'm passing the ID of that label. So whenever a screen reader is focused on that list, it will read our list of colors list. And one tiny warning, in some situations when you're using ARIA label or ARIA described by attributes on an element, a screen reader will give preference to the content of this attribute instead of the content of the element. So have that in mind. So lists can be different. It could be a simple informational list, it could be a menu, but in our situation it's a list that you can interact with. So that's the reason why I'm passing a role list box here. And you can check all of the available roles in the specification. I'm also adding a role option for each one of the list items. So this way I'm telling screen readers this element can be selected, can be interacted with. And to give more additional information, I'm passing ARIA selected true or false to each one of the items, depending on its selected state. So in some situations, you might want to hide options from your list, right? Sometimes it's disabled. So you can use ARIA disabled true and ARIA selected false to omit that option from the list, and it is as if it never existed there. ARIA active descendant is used to define the currently focused item inside of that specific list. So this way we don't have to actually change browser focus, which can be very expensive performance-wise. So and this way screen reader will have predictable behavior. So here is a recording of an inspector. I'm jumping from one list item to another one, and as you can see, the content of ARIA active descendant is being replaced by the ID of currently focused element. And you might also notice that I'm passing a CSS class to a focused item, because not all of the users with visual impairments, as we stated, are totally blind. So they can have blurred vision or tunnel vision, so they still need to see the UI. So this way, I'm passing for each one of the elements a brighter background and a very bright colored outline, so it can be visible clearly that it is focused currently. And lastly, ARIA hidden true is very useful to hide all of the auditory and informational pollution. So, and in this situation, I'm hiding our list of colors, because otherwise screen reader will read it duplicated and we don't need that. So it is less auditory pollution. And I'm also hiding the label using a CSS class because, as I said previously, sighted users don't need any context, so it will be less visual pollution. And also, to help users with color blindness, I'm passing a label for each one of the colors. And obviously, now that I'm passing labels, a text, we need to change a bit a visual representation of our colors. So instead of being a grid, as it was before, it will become literally a list of colors. And the purpose here, the idea is so screen reader, whenever it focuses on an item, it should read simply the name of the element. We don't need to know if there is an icon or anything else inside. So that's the reason why I'm hiding the SVGs also. So let's see the final code once again. I ran this code through the validator by World Wide Web Consortium. It is accessible, trust me. So a couple more moments. Okay. And this is how our list will look now. On the left side, you can see a recording of me navigating using a keyboard, and the all focused item has a brighter background on and the bright colored outline, as I said previously, and our list now became like actually a vertical list. So let's hear how a voiceover will read it now.
Entering our list of colors list box. Red, selected, 1 of 8. Pumpkin, 2 of 8. Non-photo blue, 3 of 8. Cerulean, 4 of 8.
Sorry for the fancy colors. I used coolers to find out how they are called. So now we have finally accessible list of colors that has a name. We know how it's called, the context. We know that it's a list that you can interact with. We know the amount of the items inside. We know that each one of the items can be selected and each one of the colors has a name. So this list of colors will create a nice, accessible, and inclusive experience. And now I understand that I know that if you have web accessibility in mind on the early stages of web development, it will be quite easier, but it's never too late to work on accessibility. But you remember that more later you add accessibility to your project, more difficult it becomes. So there are different ways, but this way is the tested one. So you should start with reorganizing your code, and preferably if you can delete legacy code, delete them and update your libraries versions. You can opt for more modular approach and organizing your components into literally atomic structure like atoms, molecules, and organisms. So start working on accessibility of the smaller components and then go to the bigger ones, because this way you can track the process and have more control over your code. And avoid the temptation of creating excessively abstract components. I understand in some situations two components might look and feel quite similar, but that they might have different set of attributes, maybe some visual differences, will require different keyboard navigation, and just don't create excessive abstraction. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you. And just summing up everything I talked today, give priority to HTML semantic tags, use attributes only when it's strictly necessary. Otherwise, you can mess up actually with a natural experience of your product. So be productive, try to make your life easier, use all of the available tools. So describe your UI. It's not only important for users with visual impairments, but also this way your UI will look very clear and easy to interact with. In some situations, it might be enough to navigate using a tab key, but in other situations, you might need to use a combination of tab and arrow keys or home and end keys. So adapt for each use case. At DevExperts, we don't only test inside of a browser. We test using different operative systems, different screen readers, all the common browsers. We test with keyboard navigation, and also inside a browser using extensions. So test it, it is very important. So I believe in the future we will have technologies that can solve easily web accessibility issues. And even though AI is becoming very powerful, it is not deterministic. Because machine learning is fundamentally based on probability rather than certainty. So we don't rely on it on critical business operations like handling sensitive personal data or trading stock options. So, and I believe the way how we develop web accessibility will remain the same for a really long time. And the key to create a truly inclusive experience is human attention and following and adapting guidelines. So once again, here is the QR code that I showed at the beginning of the presentation. Don't forget that we are doing a giveaway at the DevExperts booth today at 3:40. I will give a couple of more moments. So thank you very much. You have here a QR code with all of the resources that I shared today. Please scan them. So this is it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. So giveaways will be at what time you said?
3:40. And
Okay.
actually, guys, I will be here during the entire day. So if you want to ask any questions, come to me at the DevExperts booth. I will be very happy to
3:40
chat.
your giveaways, and 3:55 we will start a Kahoot challenge with fantastic prizes. So please, after your giveaways, come back
Yes.
here.
Yes.
We almost now have time for questions, but let's try first one. Why you create span with label ID, then hide it and pass it to ARIA labeled by. You can just write label there as text. What is the benefit of span element?
Okay, so it was for the sake of example because you can this way you can control your labels if you want to add some more sophisticated, bigger label. So basically, for the sake of example.